Good morning, friends, and welcome to You've Been Coached. My esteemed colleague Jack from Your Master Coach and myself from Axios Life Coaching have decided to get together every Friday to discuss topics pertaining to personal growth and achievement of goals. Our purpose is to support you taking positive actions towards your best self. During these next 4 weeks, we are going to be targeting the overarching theme, vices, creating awareness to break habits. Please let us know if you have any questions, comments, so that we can target them on our next episode, which is going to be next Friday, Setting the Bar. And today we're going to start talking about our first topic, which is expectations. So what is an expectation? And for me, broadly, very broadly, an expectation is an idea that we have about something. It could be the outcome of a certain situation, who someone is, or how someone will act, how it will go for us in a business or in life, and so forth. It is an idea about an information that we do not have at the moment. In a way, it is kind of a hope or a wish that we take as a truth. So, Jack, what do you think an expectation is, or how would you define it?
So I actually I agree with what you were just saying. I think that expectations, more than anything in your life, end up determining a bit of your reality. So an expectation, can be very broad, as you mentioned. It can also be the simplest of things. So an expectation could be something as small as I expect to wake up, take my shower, get in my car, and go to work. I expect to perform and come back home. Or there could be things such as I expect to get a raise or have a new opportunity fall into my lap. Regardless of what type of expectation it is, or that you presently have, as I mentioned, it determines your reality. So your expectations, you need to be very careful with regards to the types of expectations that you do have. You want to be honest with yourself, and you want them to be realistic. Some expectations that we have, especially at a younger age, I can just share, for example, I expected to be a professional hockey player at a younger age. But
Yes.
Now as an older person, I know that it was never a possibility. That being said, it doesn't mean that you want to limit the types of goals that you want in your life. But again, the emphasis on realistic, understanding, for example, whether or not the expectation fits into the criteria that you presently have. In this example, for example, again, it's a sport, and was I or am I physically fit enough, or am I big enough to actually have played that sport? So those are just a little bit of example. And before I pass it back to you, I just also wanted to mention that you have to be aware of the types of expectations you have. Some of the expectations that you have can actually harbor if you're harboring the wrong types of expectations, they can impact you negatively. And sometimes the expectations that you do have are above and beyond, so they can actually serve you in a negative way by limiting your motivation or putting you in a state of confusion because the expectation is, again, too high or unrealistic again. So I've come back to that word there. And when we look at the other end, when we talk about low expectations, if your expectations are too low, then you're always going to end up having poor results with regards to what you're setting out for a personal goal.
Yeah, all of that you've been saying, it's very interesting. Not only because, I mean, I want to target that realistic versus unrealistic expectations. But before going into that, I would like to say that the expectations also put you in a disposition, in a way, and I mean the way that you're going to act in a certain situation. So if you have a very high expectation and you put all your energies into that, you might burn yourself. You might overreach, and that's again the realistic versus the unrealistic expectations. And also these beliefs that you have also what's the word? I'm blanking.
That's okay. It'll come back to you. I mean,
yeah. But the thing is that you act in the way that you believe. So that's what I am trying to say. You act in the way that you believe.
Okay. Yeah.
And so let's go to the realistic versus the unrealistic expectations, like going into more deep examples about maybe what are some expectations that we have in life that are unrealistic.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with what you were saying. It's kind of if I just can come back to your point, I think it's kind of like looking at the expectations. You end up being in the moment of that expectation. So I know what you were getting at there. When we're talking about realistic and unrealistic expectations, I have a couple of points that I actually wanted to bring up, because I wanted to bring a bit of awareness and clarity to the expectation, the term expectation. Generally, when we hear that type of term, expectation, it's always viewed as something in the long term. For example, a promotion, purchasing a home, or getting married. Is that a proposal?
Having a partner. Well, you never know, Jack.
But exactly. So generally we tend to believe, or we tend to look at long-term goals as an expectation, and we overlook some of the smaller things that occur on our day-to-day basis. Exactly.
When you were saying about expectations, it's also that expectation that people have about retiring. And I am working now because I'm gonna be relaxed someday, enjoying my money or my retirement fund or whatever, and they forget about the day-to-day enjoyment of life and the day-to-day just living. Like, life is something that's gonna happen after, and it's not the present time. So,
Exactly. Great point. So one of the expectations that I wanted to bring up is actually an expectation that we may or may not be aware of, but more often than not, I find that the awareness there is not as prevalent, again, as I mentioned, as a long-term expectation. This expectation is that everybody should like you. By default, I mean, we're all creatures of habit, and we all want to have good relationships, whether it be in our personal lives or professional lives. And I've seen many times that my clients end up finding difficulty with a situation where no matter what they've tried to attempt, or no matter how many times they've reached out to a colleague or a friend, the connection is not there, and they have difficulty making sense of that. Believe it or not, I've had a client who actually felt as though that there was something wrong with them. And I want to bring this up because that's not the case. We
Yes.
need to understand that, the type of person that we are, or the type of person that we want to be, may not always be the perfect fit for others around us. And we need to understand that if we assume, I'm sorry, Jara, did you want to say something?
Oh, no, what I wanted to say is that also people assume that there is something that's wrong with them, because of feeling a sort of rejection and taking it personal when there's not that connection between themselves and other people.
Exactly.
And I think that we shouldn't assume that somebody doesn't like us because they don't respond the way that we expect them to respond, because that's precisely an expectation.
Exactly. And a lot of times, as you just brought it up, I mean, certainly we're talking about everybody should like me as far as an expectation, and it's really a want or a need for
to be accepted.
Exactly. It's a want or a need of acceptance. But again, coming back, and I guess just to summarize this one expectation, it's important to understand that as much as you do, there is the potential that others will not connect or may not like you the way that you were hoping that they would. Excuse me. If I were to give just one example, and this would be related to your career, there's always going to be the potential that you will need to work with somebody that you don't get along with. And if I can give a piece of advice, I would actually say, if you've done, or if you believe that you've reached out and the connection just isn't there, then I think you need to move past that and put yourself in a mindset of, well, I've tried to create a personal relationship, but it's not going to get there, and I'll do what is required of me in my professional relationship and treat this professionally. I think by understanding and moving past this want or need, you'll actually be in a better position to build a relationship through the more important pieces, which is respect and trust.
Yes, and I agree with what you're saying. Also, there might be the inclination to change yourself, or to try to change yourself just to be someone that the other person would like, because that's what the expectation of wanting to be liked might lead you to. And I think that, and also thinking that there is something wrong with you would make you try to change yourself. And I think that what you said about, just let go of that want, of that need of being accepted, I think that's a core and very difficult thing to do when you come from that need. But the adult and wise thing to do would be you know, to just let go and establish that relationship at a level that's professional and at the level of respect of the differences between you two, and not taking it personal, just being yourself with that person, even if that person does not have a personal relationship with you.
Exactly, and you know, coming to the point that that you had mentioned as far as changing yourself, I think that everybody who's listening can clearly resonate with what I'm about to say, where excuse me, you can pick up when somebody is going out of their way, or when they're not necessarily genuine in the way that they present themselves. And I believe, and I'm sure that those who are listening right now are thinking about one or some people in their lives that they just feel like, wow, this person is not, there's something, they're just not trying hard, or excuse me, they're trying too hard, or there's just something, they're fake. So coming back to your point as far as changing yourself to try and fulfill a want or a need, when you see, or if you're excuse me, if you're aware of it, if you can catch yourself before you decide to change, think about this. I mean, you yourself don't like, or are not drawn to people who are fake, or who you feel are fake. So why would you want to do that to other people? I mean, you're essentially lying to yourself, and you're actually trying to create an unrealistic scenario to fulfill an expectation.
Yeah, I agree.
So there's another point that I wanted to, and you know, some people are gonna, I always laugh at this one because I think about relationships when it comes to this point, and I laugh because I think it's one of the main points in a relationship, and the longevity of a relationship, and the importance of ensuring a relationship is based on honesty and trust, and that's the point of people know what I'm trying to say, and I'll give you an example. And I'm not going to put my excuse me, I'm not going to put my wife under the bus. I'm going to put myself under the bus here.
Please do that. I would not go for you putting your wife under the bus.
No, I want to continue to give videos. But so essentially, we need to understand that the people we're speaking to don't necessarily or cannot read our minds. It's simple for us to say something, but more often than not, what we're trying to communicate to others around us is not clear. And a lot of times, the expectation that people know what you're trying to say ends up backfiring.
Yep.
Because of the fact that we don't take the time to actually clearly say or communicate what we're trying to get across to the other party in a relationship, or in a business meeting, or whatever the case may be.
And I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Not at all.
But talking about relationships as well, I feel that also people expect for others to act a certain way, like that the other person can know what you need. They know this is the way that they should act. This is the way that that is what happens in relationships. So it's also the expectation of knowing that the other person knows what you say, and also that the other person knows how you want them to act or to respond or to do, or, you know, to behave with you.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jara. And I think that, as you mentioned, there's the two things. It's one, expectation that they understand what you're trying to say, and again, there's a different expectation, and it kind of ties into another expectation that we can touch upon later, which is that we can change others.
Yep.
But when it comes to people knowing what we're saying, whether it's in your business life or in your personal life, if I can give anybody a piece of advice that I think would help with clear communications and help them with overcoming a potential limitation that or issue that they're presently experiencing, it would be to assume that the person you are talking to has no idea whatsoever what you are trying to explain. When we talk about something that we are passionate about or that we already believe we know about, lots of times what we do without realizing it is we leave out information that's relevant to what we're trying to communicate. And the issue there is we've left out something that we believe is relevant or is relevant because we have already identified with it. But what we're assuming there, or the expectation is that although we've left out a piece of relevant information, we're expecting that the person on the other end of this conversation already knows. So if I could give a piece of advice, and you know, it may be, I'm not saying talk to someone like they're a baby, because some people might say, well, you know, I don't have the time to explain in this much detail. Well, the reality is, if you don't take the time to explain it the first time the right way, you will continually have to explain it, which leads to unwanted frustration. So again, if you were just to take a moment and assume that the person you're speaking to has no idea of what you're trying to communicate to them, then I think it would give you the opportunity, or it actually, would put you at leaps and bounds ahead, and it would help to establish a clear communication and help avoid unwanted frustration or miscommunication or misunderstandings.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And I think that this is a perfect moment to tie it to that wanting to change the other person. But to finish off what you're saying about communication with the other person, my favorite author says that every person is a different race, and I'm gonna say that every person is a different world, and we have to have that very, very present in any relationship that we have, you know, in a work relationship, in a love relationship, in friendship relationship, any relationship, because every person has a different story, a different background, different ways that they have processed their life, that they have processed concepts, and it doesn't matter what we're talking about. The other person is not going to get our meaning, or what we mean in any aspect of our life, if we don't really take the time to explain that, to flesh it out, precisely because of the things that have formed us. So I agree completely with the fact that you have to take the time to really explain to the other person what you're trying to say. It's like you are in a constant translation, and you have to have that present in your mind.
Yeah, absolutely, Jara. And again, it comes down to, and many people in their business relationships, especially with there are so many businesses today that rely on outside forces or outside companies. There's different cultures, there are different mindsets or understanding, and many businesses do have difficulty initially when they create a partnership or they align themselves with a different culture, because again they don't necessarily understand, or they haven't taken the time to think that what they are explaining and how they are explaining is actually interpreted, has another meaning and is interpreted differently. And that happens with different cultures, and it happens with a different person, because even when we could share a culture, we're still different. Absolutely.
And those differences cannot be erased because we are in a relationship,
Exactly. Great point.
And I think that that's the basis of respect, the recognition that there is a difference between you and me, and that we have to work our ways around those differences.
Yeah, and it opens the door. I agree. It opens the door once we do recognize that there are differences. It opens the door to a more comfortable and easily flowing relationship.
Yes.
So there is, once the initial roadblock, if you will, has been removed, there is more of a calm and respectful type of relationship. There is there's no more assumption, so there's actually more of a scenario where people are very considerate prior to saying something, or they take in the time to be aware of what they are trying to say, and in some cases maybe reword it or adapt it to those around them, knowing that, again, as you mentioned, there are some differences between the two parties. So you mentioned, you were talking about the point, and I know I mentioned it as well, about that expectation of changing him or her.
Yes, we and I know that we're using the love relationship because it is like the more basic one. But I think that targeting it as well with a business relationship or with relationships with other culture, is the idea. We have expectations that the other person or the other company or the other culture, the other whatever, would act in a way that we expect, right? I expect in a relationship that my partner is always paying attention or caring in a very paying attention or.
Sorry, what?
Yep, paying attention or being very communicative, showing that attention in a very communicative way, right? And then those are my personal expectations, right? But not necessarily the other person way of being is like that, right? So I think that we cannot change, I cannot change my partner, or you cannot change your wife, and we cannot change other people's culture. We just have to understand them, right? Understand them, to not have that expectation, and learn to accept how the other person is. And, in a love relationship, or in a partnership relationship, in a business relationship, ask yourself if you're willing to deal with that or not, which that is another topic. But certainly the only thing that you can do is change yourself, question your expectations, and see how realistic or unrealistic they are about what you're asking the other person, or what you're expecting from the other person.
Yeah, absolutely. I I know, as like you said, there is the change, him, her. I mean, our mindset, or the first thing we would think about, is a relationship. But a relationship, again, is not just a personal relationship. It could be a professional relationship.
Yep.
And in order for any relationship to actually grow and flourish, there are things that need, there is compromise. There are things that need to actually come to a comfortable level. And, as you mentioned, that there's a difference between wanting to change someone and compromise. And in one of our future videos, I think we can talk to, and we will be talking to, tolerations. And tolerations are a very big thing as far as what we are willing to tolerate and what we need to let go of. So
I have, Jack, I have a problem with the word toleration, but I think that we can target that in that video, and we maybe can discuss that that word, tolerate.
Absolutely, and it's because it's a very strong word, and right now I will not tolerate what you just said, but
no, don't, just accept it.
But that being said, again, there's a difference between a successful relationship or an importance in a relationship, and that understanding, as you mentioned, that certainly what you expect as far as your partner, whether they be your love partner, your business partner, if you expect them to change, or if you have an expectation which is unrealistic for them to change to you or adapt solely to you, then you need to take a moment, as you mentioned, to understand that the only person who's really going to change is the person themselves. Compromise is a good thing. Compromise is something that opens communication channel and says, we have and we accept that we have different views, we have different thoughts, and we actually will respect each other. But if you're expecting, and again, this is an unrealistic expectation, and I want people to take the time to think about it. If you are expecting your partner, your life partner, for example, to just let go of something that they are adamant about, or a view or a belief that they have, then you're putting yourself in a position where you are creating a ball of frustration. Whereas if you were to understand that your partner is the one who needs to change, and you yourself need to change, because this is a two-way street. you need to maybe lower your expectation in this case and say, I do expect that there's some play, in a certain view, or something that your partner does, but I should also be realistic and expect that I will not change that person 100%. So again, it's very easy for us to think of a personal life relationship here, but this is the same with business, and partnerships dissolve
because of expectations.
Absolutely, and I've witnessed very successful businesses go through a very messy breakup because of these types of expectations. And again, the importance of setting and understanding that, or building a proper foundation from day one, would have avoided this type of problem. So again, that expectation of my partner knows what I'm trying to say ends up causing a problem.
He or she should act this way.
Exactly.
Or let go of that idea, of that dream, and I think that going back to this expectation of the other person letting go of something, or changing, or maybe thinking a little bit like me, I think that any relationship is about enriching the other person, right? Enriching ourselves and enriching the other person. And that each of us, we have a different life, even when we are sharing a life or sharing a business, and that our views about anything that we might have, they are not necessarily going to change when the other person wants them to change, right? It might change if we are the type of person that are, looking, that we are evolving, because not all people really evolve, right? So, or we evolve at different paces.
Absolutely.
So that idea that this person has to do or think or let go of something, it's a process that belongs to that person, not
to the owner. Yes.
Not to me. So I think, again, as what I was saying before, we have to understand that person as a human being, and as a different person, to just relax and enjoy the relationships that we can have and the things that we can really share with the other person.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So I was thinking that we could talk about one last topic really quick, but prior to doing that, I wanted to obviously mention that our next episode is going to be about setting the bar.
Setting the bar.
And I encourage everybody to actually join us, because they'll start to see, and again, the overall topic here being vices, we've separated into many different subtopics, as you're seeing today and next week with setting the bar. I'm inviting everybody to join us, because the more that you join and participate, the more you'll start to see that many different things are actually linked together. And I hope that this conversation, as well as every conversation we always have, gives you some type of clarity, or maybe even an aha moment, like, wow, yeah, that resonates with me, and that kind of makes sense in my present day life. So that being said, I was hoping that we could just close out with something really quick, and that is the expectation that life should be fair.
Yep.
And
that is a big expectation that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it is a huge expectation, and it really speaks to people as individuals. Many people put themselves out there, or many people are finding themselves, and some people are, you know, very open. They want to give, they want to help, and sometimes these things, or offering someone help or wanting to be there for someone actually gets rejected, and they may take it the wrong way, or they may experience something that just doesn't make sense. They lost their job, and the initial reaction would be, why me?
Why me?
Why is this happening to me?
Why is this? If I've been good, why can't I find? You know, sometimes people get sick, really sick, and they you know, why is this happening to me? Why, if I've always done the right thing? And I see like people that I consider evil people succeed, and I am stuck here. I have this illness. I lost my job. I don't have a partner. And it's about this idea that life is fair, and that's a huge expectation that can disarm people. And frustrate and depress everyone.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And it leads to a lot of so this is a mindset, and don't get me wrong. I like the idea that life should be fair only because I believe that people who follow or have this one belief have attained it through vulnerability, and vulnerability for me personally is a beautiful thing. That is somebody who is willing to put themselves out there, somebody who is ready to go above and beyond. Open. Exactly. Yeah. And it's a risk. It's a risk that we take, but those who are vulnerable are the most beautiful people for me. They are willing to take.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you. Thank you.
You were just waiting for that.
I was waiting for that compliment.
So, again, life being fair is a mindset, and you know, it may be a struggle. It may affect your emotional intelligence, and as you mentioned, wear you down. Some of the things that are important is, as you mentioned, as far as things like, you know, you may be saying to yourself, why did I lose my job? Or why can't I find the proper mate? Or why am I having problems in a certain area in my life? Well, whether you believe life is fair or not, what I would like to share with you is that in order to change and in order to start to grow from any of these situations that you feel are affecting you, first and foremost, don't rely on outside forces to help you. If something has happened, it's very important for you to understand that it's happened. It may not be fair in your eyes, but it is something that has happened. And if you want to get past it, and if you want to move forward, then you need to take the action. So the sooner you change your mindset from something's unfair and you know, and I've heard this before. Okay, something unfair happened to me. Well, it's going to balance out. So I lost my job, but somebody I know is going to get me another job. Well, you're kind of putting a very unrealistic expectation, and you're actually adding to a negative mindset. You're counting on somebody outside to help you. So what I would like to say and share with everybody is, when you've run into a situation, whether you believe it's fair or not, it's very important for you to take the initiative and take the step to address that that situation that you're presently living. So the sooner you stop expecting it to balance out, the sooner you stop expecting somebody to give you a helping hand, and the sooner you take action, the sooner you'll be able to make that one difference. So I don't know if that makes sense, Jara, or if you'd like to add to that.
That makes complete sense, and I do want to add, because you're talking about people relying on outside forces, people thinking that life is going to balance itself out. And we are not going to target beliefs right now, or spirituality or any of that, but letting go of the idea. When you say life should be fair, or life is fair, you are putting life into a category of that belongs to the human, right? And that category is you're just trying to hold something that's huge and big, and that we don't really completely understand, and put it in human terms. So I don't think that, I mean, you should let go of the idea of life being fair or not fair, because life is just life. And life is something that's bigger than justice or legal terms about, fairness or unfairness. And you should, I mean, this is very difficult, but in this you have, I'm gonna say that the help me here with the pronunciation, Jack.
Sure.
Buddhist.
Yeah.
Buddhist.
Yeah. Buddhist.
The Buddhist. This separation of life. This not expectation. What is the word for that? It's not acceptance. It's just separating from. It has a. It has a.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is the perfect scenario or example of an expectation. My partner, Jara, expects me to help her.
Yes, and I expect him to know. And I expect him to know.
Yes. You see, so this is the best way. And this is the best way for us to actually wrap up our conversation. You see?
Well, I just have to separate myself from the expectation that you know what I'm talking about. But the thing is that we should separate from that idea that life should be the way we want it to be, and just accept what it is, because we cannot change it, and just work ourselves through it, concentrating the forces in ourself, in our strength, in our capability of dealing with the situations that present themselves to us, and that we can do the best that we can do in any situation, however unexpected it is, right?
Great point.
So yeah, we can wrap up.
yeah. But I'm hoping the topics and the conversation that we had actually again has resonated with many of our audience, and I'd like to invite everybody to obviously subscribe to our YouTube page. on our individual Facebook pages.
Yeah.
We look forward to questions and comments, and I encourage everybody to send us questions and comments, because ultimately the videos that we're posting and the topics that we're talking about are aimed at providing you clarity and helping you achieve the best of your personal and professional potential. So on behalf of myself, I want to thank you, and I thank you, Jara. As always, it's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you, Jack.
And I'll let you take it away.
Okay. So yeah, we want to thank you for joining us today, and we want you to think about what we have talked here, what Jack and I have talked today, and share with us your thoughts, your comments, your questions. We will welcome any conversation with you. Remember to join us next Friday for our second topic, which is going to be setting the bar. We invite you. What we're trying to do is what Jack just said, is create awareness and for you to take positive actions to achieve your goals and become your better self. Again, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook. If you want to be coached by us, go deeper into what we have been discussing here in an individual aspect, reach to any of us and give yourself the opportunity. Thank you for joining, for listening, and for being a part of this adventure that I have with Jack. And thank you, Jack, again for this enlightening conversation. And this is all for today, friends, and you've been coached.